Okay, hello everyone. My name's Anna Cott, and I'm a sustainability planner at East West Gateway Council of Governments. And welcome to the 1STL Sustainability Lab on healthy and climate resilient homes with Sunny Hutton from Tenants Transforming Greater St. Louis. 1STL is a collaborative sustainability initiative for the bi-state St. Louis region. And we have these monthly events with different topics to try to discuss and collaborate and learn together. So looking forward to this. And next month, these are always on the last Tuesday of the month. So next month, we'll be hearing about how a local municipality, school, and church have installed solar, the cost savings and other benefits that they've seen. And hopefully helping other entities learn how they can follow suit. And so you can scan if you'd like to be notified about future monthly labs, you can scan the QR code there to sign up, or I'll share a link in the chat. And then want to introduce Sunny Hutton, but I do want to allow everyone in the room a chance to introduce themselves too. So as I said, Sunny Hutton is with Tenants Transforming Greater St. Louis. Can't say enough good things, honestly, about the work that they do in the St. Louis area. Um, and they essentially at Tenants Transforming Greater St. Louis, formerly known as Homes for All, they believe that everyone should have a right to housing and that it should be safe, without mold, affordable, and so they organize renters to help change policy and pursue those goals. And so very excited about the topic today. And I already introduced myself, so I will pass it to Helen.
Thank you, Anna. We're cameras up here. Hello, everyone. My name is Helen McMeekin. I'm visiting from Scotland. I'm on a research fellowship to look at the gardens and green spaces in public housing. So I feel as though I might be a wee bit of an interloper, but sort of a side hustle. But keen to hear what's happening in St. Louis.
We're inclusive.
Sure.
Feel yourself.
Thank
Never
you.
my mother's person.
Oh.
Oh, hello everyone. My name is E, pronounced like the English letter E. I'm a postdoctoral researcher at Washington University in St. Louis. I study housing policy, eviction, population health. I'm very interested in the topic of today's seminar. And yeah, looking forward to it.
I'm Tom Rayford. Carol and I have a company, Irresistible Community Builders, and we're out to create this at scale of communities of 200 people.
That are healthy, and we train people to build them, and then they can afford to live there. Carol Rayford, pass it to you.
Hi everyone, I'm Chloe. I'm a sustainability planner at East West Gateway.
Robbie Byer. I'm with Pool Environmental Services on the general contractor.
Bruce Morrison, a lawyer at Great Rivers Environmental Law Center, a nonprofit that provides free legal services for organizations and people that seek to protect and preserve the environment and public health.
I'm Harvey Cantor, and as I'm interested in trying to make our world a better place, and there's this volunteer.
Brian Cantor and Harvey and I are on Bruce's NAACP Environmental Justice Committee. So, you know, that whole general topic.
Sunny Hutton, she, her pronouns, Tenants Transforming Greater St. Louis.
And if maybe I'll just call out people online. Morgan, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure thing. Morgan Guile. I've been kind of hanging around 1STL for several years now, kind of as support volunteer staff, but also day job as a technical researcher in strategic sustainability science at the Electric Power Research Institute, otherwise known as EPRI, and we support electric utilities around North America in their sustainability strategy. questions.
Awesome, Morgan. Thank you. And if you want, you all can popcorn it to the next person, but I'll pick Deanne. Oh, we can't hear you, Deanne.
You want here?
I can ask to unmute. Maybe we couldn't.
She on my phone, so running off.
Yeah. For now, we'll move on to Ayana and then see if we can come back. Ayana, James did introduce themselves in the chat, small farm owner in East St. Louis. Scott said that his mic is offline today, but transportation planner and property manager with Illinois Department of Transportation, District 8. And Cheryl, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, I'm Cheryl Williams. I am an outreach specialist at Great Rivers Greenway.
Awesome. And Laura? Laura says, I'm an interested community member. Jack Carswell, would you like to come off mute and introduce yourself?
Yeah, can everyone hear me? Yeah, okay, looks like it. I'm Jack Carswell. I've grown up majority of my life in St. Louis. I work for the city of Olivet as their planning and zoning administrator.
Awesome. And Anthony Pierce?
Hi, I'm Tony Pierce, Anthony Pierce. I'm with EPA Region 7 Lead-Based Paint Program.
Awesome. And Crystal?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Hi, I'm Crystal McIntyre. I'm with the EPA Region 7 Lead-Based Paint Program. We were invited by Elizabeth Kramer. She was not able to make the meeting, but we did want to show our we did want to show our support and any assistance we can provide regarding lead-based paint.
Awesome. I'm sorry, Crystal, what organization did you say you were from?
We're with the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, Region
Okay.
7.
Okay. And let's see who else. Maeve Elder. Oh, Maeve introduced themselves in the chat too. Communication and Outreach Coordinator with Missouri Gateway Green Building Council. And then Luz Rooney with Climate Reality Project. Charlie Hall. I don't know if Charlie's able to come off mute either, so I'll pass it to Kelly Hicks Holloway.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Kelly Hicks Holloway, and I'm with Forest Relief of Missouri. I'm their environmental justice lead, and I lead the Treesilience program. I'm trying to see how I may be able to connect and network with people doing similar work.
Awesome. And Bobby Bonner.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Bobby Bonner. I'm the Director of Community Revitalization with the Urban Eco Block and a real estate developer with BM3 Technology.
Awesome. And Maria, I'm so sorry, I can't say your last name.
Hi, Maria's fine. I'm an environmental health officer with the City of St. Louis Health Department.
Okay, awesome. And did Jacqueline get a chance to introduce themselves? Jacqueline Trotman.
Good afternoon. My name is Jacqueline Trotman. I'm also an environmental health officer with the St. Louis City Health Department.
Okay, awesome. And I think the only person we haven't heard from is Deanne. Yeah, I think they're not able to come off mute. We still can't hear you. But feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat too. And I think we had 2 more people join us if you want to briefly introduce yourselves.
Hi, everybody. My name is Kyle Crawford. I'm help with one SDL stuff, and that's enough for that. I'm Elliot Williams, and just looking to get involved.
Awesome. Well, Yeah, thank you so much, everyone. So without further ado, I'll pass it off to Sunny.
Everybody can see the presentation online. Can you guys hear me well?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so this initiative got started in the 2023 and was funded by the Missouri Foundation for Health. And we titled it Home is Where Our Health Is. We started as a collaboration between before I go into that. The whole purpose of Home is Where Our Health is to develop a comprehensive understanding of the code enforcement process and the ecosystem of resources available or needed to support low and fixed income residents in maintaining a healthy home. And we wanted to focus primarily on low income homeowners and renters because we felt as if those were the groups that would be mostly impacted if we were to like switch up and start making changes to our code enforcement process.
And Sunny, if you want to turn your video on, people online will be able to see you speaking more easily, but it's up to you.
Okay, let me put the video on so y'all can see my face. Okay, right, so this is just an agenda of what we're going to go through today, looking at the problem, the approach, key findings and solutions, and a call to action. I'll sprinkle a little things here and there just to show you. Some people may have more interest on, okay, how do you do systems change work, especially when you work within the system, and for those who may work outside of municipal government. And then some of you may be more interested in like the findings. What did your research and data demonstrate for you, and what efforts, what solutions did you come up with, and how are those solutions coming along? All right, so the problem is living in substandard housing, we all know can affect your physical and mental health and well-being. At Tenants Transforming Greater St. Louis, like Anna said, we are a Black renter-led organization where we try to improve housing quality. And by doing that, we catalyze tenant associations that serve as an accountability mechanism for landlords to improve and or maintain the quality of housing. And from our own personal experience, all our staff members are renters. From our own personal experience, and then from those of our base is where we came to the conclusion, like, dang, the house that we live in affects our health. So we started off with this like hypothesis just based on our own experience. And we also felt like the current city housing code has like these minimum standards for maintaining a healthy home. And renters are usually ill-equipped with the tools to advocate for themselves. And usually a uniform code enforcement system, if weaponized, could cause displacement in specific populations. Like an example of it, if someone wants to buy your home, because I know there are folks who get calls, especially more recently, homes closer to that Delmar divide, you get calls on a regular saying, I want to buy your house and I'll buy it with cash. Well, that same person can walk through the neighborhood, see your home and say, they don't have gutters. And they can call CSB and report it. And then an inspector will come out, see that you don't have gutters, and then you can get a code violation fee for that. So it's things like that. Those fees can add up, and eventually it can lead to just a snowball effect, causing that person not being able to afford their home. So that's one way in which we feel like code enforcement can be weaponized, but a uniform code enforcement system also penalizes low and fixed income homeowners who may lack the resources to maintain their homes. And like those repeat code violations that keep adding up can force someone to try to sell their home on the speculative market. So these are the people that are involved in this. These were at least the initial people that were involved in the project Home is Where Our Health Is. It says Homes for All St. Louis, still needs to be edited. I'm still getting used to the new name, y'all. Tenants Transforming Greater St. Louis. Of course, like I said, we're a Black renter-led organization. And then we signed an MOU with the Vacancy Collaborative, which I know many of you are already familiar with. And they're like a cross-sector collaboration of the public and private. And they've done like the Vacancy Property Explorer, the Vacancy Initiative. They actually got the contract from the city of St. Louis to map out the city's vacancy strategy. And then we signed an MOU with the city of St. Louis's building division, which was under Frank Oswald at the time. And we're all familiar with the city buildings division. They issue building permits, they conduct the building inspections, demolish vacant buildings, enforce zoning ordinances. So this is who the key partners were initially. And for those who are interested in like, how do you get to this like level of systems change? It takes a really diverse coalition of individuals to do and partner organizations to do this. So we have the community component, which is made up of our group. And then we also have what we call fellows that serve on our coalition, which are residents who are both renters, student renters, low-income homeowners, and another one where I like to call legacy homeowners, which are the ones who probably got their home passed down to them from their family. And then of course, some like neighborhood association representatives. You always need the voices of those who have direct experience or who will be mostly impacted by whatever policies or initiative or what the issue is that you're covering. And then of course, we have our government partners, the buildings division, Department of Health, our city councilor's office, the president of the board of alderman office, SLDC, CDA, mayor's office, and St. Louis area on agency. When you first think about bringing together like a diverse coalition of people, you really have to think about all the different components. What are you trying to achieve? Well, we knew we wanted that in order for us to address, if we wanted to improve housing quality, prevent displacement, we knew that there was going to have to be some policy changes. So we brought on board the legislators. We knew we were going to need the support of the mayor's office. She signs legislation, but also the director of operations also is the one that kind of it's like our city manager. They manage the operations of the city, how departments collaborate with one another, and we knew that was essential to like ultimately hitting our goals. Then we brought in the public health sector, all of academia, but these were also the people who could do some of the heavy lifting like data analysis, because there ain't no data analyzer in a rental-led organization. So we knew we needed these folks on board. And then we also brought in our practitioners, so people who are actually developing homes, renting homes out, and then our nonprofit partners below at the bottom. So when you're thinking about, when you're thinking about systems change, you really need to think about all the different stakeholders that need to be involved in order for you to ultimately reach your goal. But also think about what skill sets do I lack and bring those skill sets on board. We even had to bring on Change Lab Solutions. They're more of the legalese. So they looked at preemption to see if any of the policies that we proposed would be preempted on the state level. They looked at our, we brought on WashU's Environmental Health Clinic, and it looks like I don't even have them on there. So I was WashU. We brought them on. They drafted our model mold ordinance bill. So I don't draft legislation. That's not something I do. But you want to think about what are the skill sets that I lack and make sure you bring those people on board. This was our approach and kind of like a timeline of what we went through. March of 2023 is when we launched this effort. That was our first convening. And we started off by process mapping the code enforcement process. So process mapping is simply just walking through what it takes to go through an inspection when a violation is given, starting from the resident perspective. So you just it's like a flow chart. You just walk through that entire process. And within that process, we had everyone look at it and say, where do you see some potential inefficiencies or pain points that might cause a little bit of tension? Then we did some peer learning and best practices research. even though I said like there's no data analyzer on our team, SEAC, which is the Community Innovation and Action Center, they were actually doing our best practices research. But then their student had some family issues, so then I had to pick up the best practices research. So, you know, I built a muscle. Another thing that was included in our peer learning is that we actually took all of our coalition partners, including the residents, including city departments, to SCHEMA, which stands for the Strategic Code Enforcement Management Academy at the University of Memphis, so that we can all get some like basic code enforcement training. We also have the opportunity to talk to these other like model cities that are doing it so well, but also are like similar to us demographically. So we were able to speak to like folks in Baltimore. They're amazing. But we were also able to speak to some of those cities who are like this like beacon, you know, so like Syracuse, New York, you know, anybody on the East Coast, you know, some folks on the West Coast, you know, they kind of do things a little bit better than us. Minneapolis, oh yeah, they're amazing, right? So we had the opportunity to learn, but it wasn't just the city departments getting this understanding, but it was also residents getting this understanding as well, so that they can actively participate in this process. They are a part of the decision-making process. They are not someone we go and do one interview with. They're not someone we just give a survey to like garner their feedback. We don't, with some of the words, we don't just inform them. We don't just consult them. They are active leaders in this process. What's so odd about our process is that we are a community-based organization led by renters who basically sent out an email to the city of St. Louis and said, we're doing this. Y'all should get on board. And they responded, which is, you know, odd for some, but that definitely switches the power dynamics and puts the power back in the hands of the people, which is beautiful if you're into that kind of thing. I am. And then from June to November, we did that data collection and analysis of health and housing quality data. The data we received, what's great about having these partnerships, the data we received was from the Department of Health epidemiologists, which is really hard word. So they were able to give us health data. Then we got housing quality data from the building division and CSB. And then we also use like census, demographic data, and then some state health data as well. Use like geospatial analysis and like did an overlay of all that data together. And I'll share with you what we found from that data. Let me just say our hypothesis was correct. August through December 23rd, we did some solutions and recommendations generating sessions, and this was an all-inclusive process. Everyone was a part of it. And for those of you who have like more of an interest, and if you could like put this in the chat or give me like a thumbs up emoji or something like that, are there people who are more interested in like the coalition building and systems change aspect? Anybody at this table? Okay. Well, what I can say about those sessions, I mean, this coalition is, before we even got started, I had one-on-ones with every single person. So it wasn't just an email I sent out. Okay, I did send an email, but I also sat down with every single partner and told them and like had an ask for them. You know, I had to first see like where their interests lie, but then also, and then I proceeded to make that ask and tell them exactly what I needed them to do. And that's just like organizer one-on-one. On top of that, when we came together, we decided on what our values and principles were. We developed those together. And you would be surprised how aligned you are. You see these different parties or entities, and you would think that they would traditionally be like adversarial towards one another. And yeah, in some cases, but it turns out we all had the same values. Collectively, we said, we want racial equity to be at the helm of this, racial justice to be at the helm of this. Transparency, everyone agreed to that. And then we also decided on how we make decisions. So that's really important. You just can't bring people in a room and not know who's going to make the final decision on what. Everybody, it was consensus. I was surprised that people wanted consensus, because you know what people say about consensus. Well, it takes too long. Or somebody has to be the boss. Well, everyone decided on consensus, and like crazy enough, we have not had conflict yet. Conflict is inevitable, and we're prepared to handle it when it comes, but crazy enough, it has not taken place. And everyone has agreed on these like solutions and recommendations. I know, I'm crazy, right? January 2024 through March 2024 is when we took all that data that we laid on top of each other, and we drafted the health and housing quality brief. That also came out with a set of like 7 recommendations that were like our top priority recommendations. We thought they were just like baseline. Like if we're gonna do all that other stuff, we at least need to get these. And then from April 2024 until now, we've been advocating for those recommendations. This is the approach that we took, just more to the left. That's that process map that I was telling you all about. That starts from when a resident submits a CSB request. On the left, I know it's a little bit hard to see, but Anna has this presentation. And so you can actually just click on this stuff, and you'll have access to view it.
We did get a question if I can share the slides afterwards, so that's okay if I email them to people who attended on Zoom.
Yes.
Okay.
And then to the right is our best practices research, just like the themes that we were finding in the literature. I'm telling you, I felt like a college kid all over again doing this best practices research. And then of course our ladder of enforcement, so just like looking at enforcement tactics based on time and cost. And then the last little map down to the right is, so the one to the left is the Department of Health, and then the bottom one to the right is the buildings division process. Buildings division.
Can I ask, they already have these process maps created?
No.
Because that's not surprising.
Yeah. So here are some of our top findings from the health and housing quality. So the top interior housing code complaints are for lead, mold, pests, rodents, and plumbing, all things that could and can impact your health. And zip codes with greater housing code violations and reported, because we also had like self-reported health, and our highest among Black neighborhoods located in North St. Louis City and then Southeast St. Louis City. When I show you the maps, none of this is going to be surprising to you. So everybody's familiar with North St. Louis City, majority Black area, and then Southeast St. Louis City is that little corner with Dutchtown, Gravois Park, Marine Villa area. Y'all familiar with it? My old hood. And then another top finding was Black children in the city are nearly 14 times more likely to experience negative health outcomes, such as elevated blood levels. Now, the crazy thing about this is there was a report done, I think it was called the Equity Indicators Report, which they also turned into a dashboard by Christina Garmenia. And that was under the Lyda Krewson administration, I believe. So this was what, 4+ years ago, right? That number used to be 3 times, 5 times. So it just shows you that we have not improved in housing quality and or health outcomes. It's actually gotten worse. We did an ecosystem scan to see what resources are available to folks when it comes to improving their housing quality. And only one organization provides renter home repair. And that would include things like doors and locks, windows, weatherization, things of that sort, safety related. And it's so hard to get in contact with these people. We send folks, it gets to the point where we're like, we don't even know if we should because we have a renter hotline, and we're like, we don't even know if we should recommend it because people will just be waiting. And home repair services are also unavailable in other languages. So our ESL neighbors struggle to get access to these resources just because of that language barrier. And then when we did our process map, I'll take you to the next page that kind of outlines some of the pain points that people found within our code enforcement processes. The first one is that it was a resident complaint driven system. People feel as if when the onus is put on the resident to report what's happening in their home, there may be some hesitancy to do that. They really believe that a lot of the data that we got was an under-report of what is actually out there about and the conditions because of the resident complaint driven system. And then we don't have, so this means the city of St. Louis doesn't have an accurate depiction of our current housing stock. The second one was that there are seniority-based inspector assignments. Crazy enough, y'all, people were really honest. And it was amazing. So seniority-based inspector assignments are based on how many years you've been working with the city. You get to determine which district you work in. I mean, and are you gonna choose the district laden with multiple code violations? Most likely not. So then that means we have our more, what's the word for those people? We have our new, right? We got our new, or our newbies going to some of the areas that need a little bit more additional support and love, right? And they may not be familiar with how everything works. The third one was there are little to no violation. So the citation letters are associated with fees. Two things are happening. Those fees are like at minimum $25 per violation. The health department actually, per ordinance, can associate a fee with their citations, but have not, because they can only accept one form of payment. Also, our city charter kind of sets a max at what our fees can be at $500. And that was developed in the 1970s or some sort. So if we calculate for inflation, that number would actually be around like 3,500, I estimate. Don't quote me, math's not my strongest. Okay. The fourth one is that inspectors only inspect during the 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. window, and tenant evidence is not accepted. This means that those pests and rodents that are traditionally nocturnal or have, you know, certain mating patterns you won't find during the daytime. That's just the reality of it. Because there are just some roaches you won't see. Or bed bugs who just, I'm only coming out for my feet. And then the fifth one is that inspectors research the owner because we have unavailable property owner contact information. Inspectors should be inspecting. They should be documenting. They should be inspecting and documenting. Inspectors should not have to go and look for who owns this property. That means they have to Google, they have to go to the Secretary of State website, and this information is not in a database and readily available for them. There is the sixth one, no tenant communication or support. We, in doing our initial process mapping, what we found is that a tenant will not know, even though they're the one that makes the call, a tenant will not know that there is a housing code violation that could potentially lead to condemnation until that condemnation letter is on their door. And if a tenant wants to find out about open housing code violations on their property, they have to sunshine request the city and pay a fee. Who can do all that? Exactly. Also, if their home is condemned, that's it. They got to figure it out on their own. There's no payment. There's no, let's help you find housing, nothing of the sort. And then our seventh one, in an ever increasing climate, there is no mold ordinance or cooling ordinance in our health or building codes. So you can build a home and it's not required to have cooling. And when it comes to mold, people do report mold to the CSB. What initially happens is that it will go to the health department, but the health department doesn't have the equipment. Well, none of our departments have the equipment or the training to do that. And they see mold as a result of something structural. So they send that CSB request to the buildings division. So the buildings division has to come out and look at structure, but they cannot cite for mold. They can cite for, okay, it looks like this is really poor tuck point. They can cite for something like that. I wanted to show these maps because if you are so St. Louis, then you are familiar with these maps. The one to the left is the kind of where the majority of our Black population resides. And then you'll see the second one shows where most of those calls for lead, mold, and pests come up are still in those same areas, the north side and then that southeast corner. And then chronic CLRD, which is chronic lower respiratory disease. Those ER visits still concentrated in the same areas. Asthma ER visits, same thing. Then we said, let's propose some solutions. And one, we separated them into two sections. One is administrative solutions. So these are like low-hanging fruit that can happen operationally or process-wise within the department that doesn't require legislation. And a simple one that we propose is just to send a copy of the inspection notice of violation to the tenants. I think that's it. And then the second one, collaborate with community-based organizations. We've had people request to have like a building inspector come to their neighborhood association meeting, and honestly, it's not realistic. The amount of calls that our inspectors are getting, they can't go from 9 to 5 doing inspections and then show up for your evening meetings. It's just not realistic. So we're saying collaborate with community-based organizations who already have clients that they service, meeting places that people go to and that they trust. Connect with those community-based organizations who can relay information. So it can be some type of feedback mechanism. And then 3, expand the role of emergency inspectors. So we have emergency inspectors that come out after the 9 to 5 hours, but they only come out for fires. We're proposing that they come out to do some of those inspections for those pests and rodents.
Does the city of St. Louis require occupancy permits or not?
Yes.
They do?
Yeah. Policy solutions for the Board of Aldermen explicitly address mold in our building codes. Include anti-retaliation language in renter-related ordinances. And this is because we said that some folks felt as if the data that we were getting was underreported. They felt like there's got to be more going on. And we proposed including anti-retaliation language in the ordinances so that people feel more inclined and empowered to report what's happening in their homes. But also that when we come up with these different policy solutions, that it's not being pushed off on, that the cost of it is not being pushed off onto the residents. Perform proactive, regular and routine rental inspections. I'm sure most people are familiar with that. Instead of us waiting for an occupancy permit to have to come through, we should just have an idea of what our existing housing stock, what the conditions of it are. And then relocation assistance, just get the people their money. If you're gonna condemn their house, get them their money so they can find a place to stay. So this is for renters. Our research, the conclusions of the report was, our hypothesis was right. There is a connection between housing quality, and we think it's inextricably linked to racial segregation and the health outcomes of our residential housing occupants. And the data shows that Black communities are disproportionately impacted by this problem. And as a city, we have to continue to track the racial impact of code enforcement systems and then partner alongside our communities to eliminate these inequalities. We also said the city has to develop more systems for like more accurate data and reporting so that policy outcomes can be tracked. This is just a map for us so I can just show you kind of the different efforts. Before we came along, there were already people doing amazing work. And I wanted to be able to like honor them in this presentation when it comes to the housing quality ecosystem. The home repair network is being held down by North Newstead Association. And the report that the home repair network came out with was a product from a collaboration with the UMSL CAC, which is the Community Innovation and Action Center. And then the Green City Coalition, so long ago, the Vacancy Collaborative, most of us are familiar with their vacancy initiative and strategy. The ways in which we've tried to address the challenges that you see on the left have been through research, advocacy, and capacity building. This presentation was mostly on research. I presented about some of the policies that we've advocated for, and in terms of capacity building, we've been providing technical assistance to the city of St. Louis and its municipal actors. And we're actually, that Strategic Code Enforcement Management Academy, we will be bringing them to St. Louis so that we can do full training and technical assistance. We will also be bringing people from Baltimore and Syracuse so they can work directly with our staff and work directly with our city to prepare for some of these changes. So just a few updates on kind of what's been happening with those policies, those recommendations that we had up front. So safe temperatures and rentals. This one was passed April of this year, April of 2024. Now there's some edits that this safe temperatures and rentals. This is like an incremental policy. So it does not require that all apartments or all rentals have cooling, right? That's not the initial. It's kind of like for those who already have cooling, you have to maintain it. And you have to maintain it through these certain months out of the year. So that's how far we've come with safe temperatures and rentals. Impacted Tenants Fund was, I believe, introduced December of 2023, but passed through committee in 2024. Impacted Tenants Fund is relocation assistance for those whose homes are condemned. And then we drafted a model mold ordinance, and that was drafted by WashU's Environmental Law Clinic. That will be being introduced September of this year. And then in terms of that one recommendation we had about collaborating with community-based organizations, we will actually be working closely with the Buildings Division to get them a new position called the Community Engagement Liaison that will be able to show up to those meetings that y'all been asking about, connecting directly with those community organizations. They will be housed underneath us at TTG. So we'll hire them, we'll train them, but it's definitely going to be collaborative amongst ourselves and the city to pilot this position. Before I do my call to action, I did just want to like hint on a few things that we're doing. So we've separated. So yes, we're one big coalition, but we like separate into committees so that we can like easily do work, we cook some kitchen type stuff. We have one of our committees is the advocacy committee. They're the ones primarily focused on drafting, passing, and advising legislation. And they also support with they also do like implementation support. And they're the ones come 2025, they will be doing, they'll be advocating for the budget to get allocated towards some of these efforts. Because right now the Impacted Tenants Fund was funded with like $100K of ARPA dollars. And then violation fees and stuff will go towards it to like replenish it every year. But we're going to advocate for additional funding to go towards it. This community engagement liaison position, when that is actually being taken care of by our technical assistance committee. So they're the ones that's going to draft that role. And that's a collab, and that committee houses our health department, our buildings division, the vacancy collaborative, and our fellows. When that gets drafted, we'll do the hiring for that together. And then also they're working on getting that conference up and running for 2025 as well. So that's Strategic Code Enforcement Management Academy. And then we have our public outreach and comms committee. Their focus is public outreach. They're the ones that show up to events, share information about the updated policy. They share about our findings. They do this presentation that I'm doing right now. And then they'll be working on like an advocacy toolkit that kind of demonstrates to people this is how the code enforcement process works so people can better navigate city systems. Any questions?
Question, I mean, I've been a landlord before, and it's really unrealistic to expect, landlords to front everything with the resources from the tenants. I mean, tenants aren't paying the rents, then landlords can't do a lot of the improvements, and that's where the resources. general company.
So what was your question?
So how was it that, seems like it's a lot of it's very, top down and I understand it's wonderful to like help tenants, but tenants have to do, some of their own stuff as far as funding, improvements for the property.
You get a check every month, use that to go towards it.
Right.
Because
well,
the
that's
reality
not
is you
necessarily
you also make a profit from the money that you get.
not necessarily,
Okay,
not necessarily.
okay. This was not done in isolation, but in collaboration with people who are also landlords, people who are also developers.
Sure.
So what we're creating is not something that, and what we've done is also incremental so that we are not placing the burden on tenants.
How could that not be the case though?
Which one? Give me an example, which one?
For all of them. That's where the buck stops. I mean, if the tenants can't afford it, then the property managers don't have the resources necessarily to work with unless they're supposed to get it from government sources.
You're not giving me a particular example of which one of these burdens, sending a copy of an inspection notice to a tenant causes a burden to landlords? Does collaborating with community-based organizations cause a burden? Does expanding the role of emergency inspectors?
That sounds like stuff that the city's gonna do.
Yeah, but I'm just trying to find out, in which of these solutions did you hear the burden is being placed on the landlord and the tenant needs to pay in order for that to?
Oh, it's just a natural consequence.
Relocation assistance, performing proactive rental inspection, including anti-retaliation language, addressing mold in building codes.
No.
I don't see, we see it differently. It's okay.
Yeah.
Let's open it up for somebody else.
I agree with you. I think that, it's wonderful. It sounds great in a perfect world, but at some point, the cost is gonna be bared.
But give me an example. Which one?
Because
which of my examples puts burden on the landlord?
Yeah.
I'm gonna stop you right there. I'm not gonna engage in conversation with you because you just told me not to be aggressive.
Well, not to
and that's the one thing you do not tell a Black woman. Now I am upset.
Yeah,
I'm offended by what you just said.
It wouldn't matter the color of your skin.
Okay.
Okay, let's move on to other questions. Go ahead.
So thanks so much for the presentation. I really appreciate the report that you put together. I was just wondering, like, you recommended to give tenants a notice if their apartment or property has a code violation attached to it. And I was wondering, like, since landlord also has some role in this, is it possible to also provide them some types of resource list, like, because sometimes if your building it's like short of like repair, it might be like the landlord also had some financial difficulties, and I'm sure like there are other governmental programs that provides like subsidies for landlord to, I don't know, like keep their property up to a certain level, like the energy assistance programs, like the weatherization programs.
Yes, so there are weatherization programs. What we've seen is that the city actually came out with, there's at least 2 different documents that like guides for homeowners, so that if they need their property fixed, they walk them through every resource that's available to them. And then we also have the home repair network, which has this again, another guide that offers all of the resources that you could possibly think of. So that's the home repair network and their home repair guide. And then there was one created by the city. I just cannot remember the name of it, but it is available on their website.
Yeah, I was just thinking about like not only providing the renters more information, and also like providing landlords.
And that's the thing.
Resources that
I am a renter-led organization, so I don't make resource guides for homeowners or corporate landlords, but because those resources are already out there. So, like I said, Home Repair Network has a guide. And then there's a resource available on the city's website. And then we also have Tower Grove CDC that does landlord trainings.
Yeah. And a follow-up question is like, have you ever considered like putting up together a list of like worst corporate landlords that has like the most code violations filed like in the St. Louis city?
Yes, we've considered it. There is a report that came out called Community Health versus Community Wealth by Human Impact Partners. That's one that kind of like spotlights St. Louis and does some like stories from residents that are dealing with some of those corporate landlords. And it even goes over kind of like the strategies and tactics that they use to extract profit, but they're harming human health. But yeah, that list, we got asked by someone to pull together that list of like, who are you hearing are some of the worst? Because we have a renter hotline. So then we do keep track of all the data that comes in so we can pull from that. Now, someone else may make a list. I mean, it may be completely different, but yeah, it's been talked about to pull together kind of like some of the bad actors.
Yeah, is it a work in progress or it's already like published somewhere?
That one is not published.
Okay. Before I do it.
One question that I have, and please feel free to share questions in the chat too for the folks online or raise your hand. But when you mentioned, Sunny, the city's charter and the maximum fees, I think it's my understanding that a change to the charter will actually be going to the voters in November. Do you happen to know anything more about that?
That's all I know.
Okay.
What I do know is that change to the charter would allow for like the Board of Aldermen to go through a more administrative process to change fees. So it just eliminates the 500 max. It doesn't set a fee or anything. It just allows them to go through a more administrative process to determine fees.
Yep. Sonny, your question and a thought. I was actually coming in wanting to ask about imposing an additional burden on a landlord that we were talking about. Thinking, well, from my perspective, it would be okay. Landlords collecting all this rent from tenants. But it had to do with a change in code, a change in an ordinance that would require legislative change. And at the certificate of occupancy stage. And the reason for it, a renter came along telling a story about how she knew that her water had excess levels of lead in it. She had tested it. Her children had been tested and they had high blood lead levels. They were affected. So potentially lifelong impacts. And here she was stuck in this apartment, in a sense stuck because she had no other place to go. She didn't want to report this to the city, didn't want to report it to the landlord. Her solution was to bring in bottled drinking water. She had no other place to go. So I wanted to pitch the thought of, well, as part of a certificate of occupancy, that the building owner be required to test the drinking water for lead. And if the water was not safe to drink, then there would be the requirement that a filter system be put on the drinking water before the tenant moves in, so that the drinking water is made safe. And it occurred to me that what I'm proposing is going to be costing more than what you're teeing up here, but in the overall scheme, not a lot. I say not a lot. Here I'll throw out numbers. Of a few $100s to put a filtration system on the drinking water. Yet landlord's going to be collecting every month hundreds of dollars in rent. But before I started tossing this out, and then hearing about, well, what about costs to the landlord? Are there going to be costs? I suppose in the mold context, it's the same analogy. If the inspector comes out and finds mold and imposes a requirement on the landlord, remedy that mold, okay, there's the cost on the landlord. But that's how it goes. Landlord's gonna be collecting rent. Should pay. There's gotta be a question in here. Here's the question. What about this extra burden of imposing in a code requirement to test drinking water and filter it before that tenant moves in? Because once the tenant's there, the tenant's gonna be stuck. Is that too big of a burden to impose? I'm adding something additional to what you're proposing.
I don't think it's too much of a burden. I have heard this proposal before. I want to say it was WashU Environmental Law Clinic that had suggested potentially like the testing of the water before, and there being a minor fix like the filtration system. Yeah, I understand in our conversations with like Tower Grove CDC, it was Dana Gray who said to me, she said, you have to be mindful of what you're doing because this is how much these things will cost for a landlord. You give us like, this is the average cost for putting in a new AC system. And so that's why when we develop that safe temperatures and rentals, it's not required. It's only required if you already have a cooling system. So it does not require people who don't have cooling systems now to go out and buy a new $5,000 or $10,000, what's that system called? Where it's a
HVAC?
Yeah, HVAC, right? It's simply, if you had it beforehand, you have to maintain it. And it's required that it's maintained during these specific months where we have some of the worst heat conditions. And then it's also, we give leeway if it's an emergency situation, because sometimes you can call on a Friday and say my air went out. Well, we may not be able to get somebody over until the following Monday. So it's like, okay, you just have to keep one room cool at this certain temperature and until you're able to get someone out. So we were mindful in drafting this legislation that it kept in mind that the burden would not be placed on the renter, but also that it wouldn't be like a huge cost for the landlord as well. So that's why when I refer to our policy changes more as incremental rather than like it's the end all be all and you gotta switch and do everything now, because that's not financially realistic for many people here. Now it may be realistic for them corporate landlords, that's a different audit. But yeah, I think something of that sort would take some debating and some roundtable discussions with a really diverse group of partners before deciding exactly what that possible legislation would look like. And then we also have to check on the state level to see what would potentially exempt us from employing something of that nature. I don't know if that answers your question.
No, I think it helps me understand the extent to which you're considering costs. If something gets to be too much, then something we can't bite into.
You know, it really encourages me to hear you drop the name Dana Gray. She just so knows what she's talking about, and she's thinking about very broadly how to address things.
And she is, because she works on both sides, right? So she works for a nonprofit developer. She's also a landlord herself, but then she leads the low income working group so we can, make sure that residents aren't energy burdened. So it's good to have diverse opinions.
And it really helps to understand what you've gone through. What you've done, Sunny, is amazing. Thank you.
Thank you. And look, Luz Rooney is saying one of your solutions is to collaborate with community organizers to provide social and financial services. What is the responsibility of the landlord or the building owners? Why not make them accountable? Luz, can you, and Luz, can you, elaborate on what you're saying?
Sure, thank you. Thanks for taking my question, and great job, Sunny, by the way. So, if somebody calls because they have mold in their apartment, they have rodents and they have lead in their water, the apartment is not in good shape. It shouldn't even be rented if the apartment is not in good condition. It should not even be rented.
You know, we've definitely had some situations like that before. I don't know if anybody remembers, Heritage House. And then there was also this other landlord on the south side that was collecting rent, and was getting state and federal dollars as well. And that those were barely, yeah, they were not living. I think in those situations, because we don't keep track, because we're not, as a city, we're not doing regular proactive inspections. The only time an inspection happens is when, that occupancy permit is triggered. So we don't know the conditions of the homes. So, and we would only know as a city if someone called the CSB or someone, filled out the form online. This made me forget one of the recent policies that was enacted. In December of 2023, we passed the rental registry. I think about for the first the rental registry is simply just, do you own a rental property here in St. Louis? Give me a local contact, and it'll be housed in a database for city inspectors to be able to use if any of this if they have to come and do an inspection. The rental registry is first going to be optional, so you don't have to sign up initially. I think for like the first 1 or 2 years, some others may know a little bit more about this one. But then afterwards, you will be required to have a local contact. So I said the purpose of this one was so that inspectors have a local person they can reach out to during the inspection process and have someone to hold accountable. And 2, this was really important for those big LLCs and corporate landlords, because we don't have a face, we don't have a name, and you could continue to send mailers to this address that you might have found online, but still no results, So the rental registry is an effort to try to hold someone accountable. At least to have their contact information first.
Are you seeing in your research, are you seeing a impact from out-of-town investors buying up St. Louis properties and flipping them to Airbnbs? Are you seeing a reduction in the availability of rental properties? Because I'm just familiar with a block where we have some property that we're looking to develop for home ownership, affordable home ownership.
Lots of
and
people
in the last year and a half,
I get those calls.
in the last year and a half, a half dozen properties on that block have kind of surreptitiously flipped to Airbnbs.
Okay, so I'm not familiar. Our research didn't go over like Airbnbs or like the conversions. But I don't know much on this either, but there has been new legislation on short-term rentals. So maybe referencing that might be helpful for you.
Yeah, I guess this would be considered. That's what it would be considered.
And there was something else that I can't quite remember. Not that in particular, but when it comes to me, I'll let you know.
I think all of my questions have been answered. Does anyone else in person or online have any additional questions?
I have a quick question. We've got here at EPA, we've got a tremendous amount of funding that's come our way to spread out within Region 7 through grants. And a number of the topics that you all have been discussing here today would likely fall within our environmental justice program grants or the brownfields education and job training grants in order to build the workforce to have local residents participate in renovation and repair services. So I was just wondering if you had considered any of those funding opportunities or are considering them.
We have not, but now we should. And then it also sounds like there's opportunities for home repair as well. See, this is great. We can have a both and. So the home repair network could probably apply for that one. I do know that.
So yeah, if you look at the Thriving Communities grant opportunities that are currently out, there's a number of the topics that you've discussed today that could potentially fall under that. And I can't say too much as far as, advice and guidance because it is an open funding opportunity right now. But, climate resiliency and air conditioning for homes kind of tie together most of the time. So that might be something to consider.
What I do know, we have a group of nonprofit developers that are getting together under CBN to apply for the CCG grant, the EPA CCG grant, Community Change Grant. And they're wanting to do updates, energy efficiency upgrades to their portfolios. And I think that's a step in the right direction, but being able to get the additional funding for the ones who are not for kind of our small town landlords or our homeowners, that would be ideal.
And Tony, Luz posted this in the chat, but would you be able to share those links? I was familiar with the Thriving Communities sub-grants, but I wasn't, it didn't look like they were open yet for anyone to apply.
So there's a series of grants. The one that Sunny just mentioned, the Community Change is currently open. And then some of the other grants have closed and are likely to reopen later on, depending on how many awards and what the funding balance is. And ultimately, of course, what Congress decides to do with any leftover funds from this fiscal year. So I'll throw the best single resource is our TICTAC, the Thriving Communities Technical Assistance Center, which is based out of Wichita State. So I'll throw a link to the TICTAC in the chat there, and definitely reach out to them to seek funding opportunities for several of these programs.
We and just to let you all know, we have the city of St. Louis is drafting a sustainability plan, a new and improved sustainability plan, and I am pulling together. I'm doing the community engagement for that project. I would love to be able to reconnect with all of you. So if it's at all possible, maybe I can come back to another 1STL lab, or if you can provide me with the contacts of folks, just because I want to have y'all's opinion in the drafting of this plan. It's gonna be crucial.
We would love that. Kyle's on the volunteer 1STL communications team, so that's why his nod means you're in. And
something we can do that's kind of more interactive. That sounds exciting.
Okay.
Yeah, and we're always looking for ideas for upcoming sustainability labs. The person from East St. Louis we had on the call dropped off, but always great to hear from the Illinois side too. And what else did I want to say about that? And yeah, I hadn't heard that an engagement process was starting for the city's sustainability plan. So I'd be really glad to learn more.
Yeah, we probably have another month before it kicks off, but I'll start bugging y'all now.
Okay, awesome.
Anna, is there any overlap with your work on the EPA grant program and EPA-ness that is in the air?
So our regional climate action plan likely will open public engagement, probably not in a month, but hopefully by late fall or winter. So they will kind of be going on at the same time. But were you asking in terms of the EPA grants as well, or?
We were just talking about how EPA's pockets are jingling loudly, and you all are working in that same category. So I was just seeing if there was any overlap.
Yeah, I'm hoping that our regional climate action plan, and I can share a link to that in the chat too. I'm hoping that will help kind of act as a guide to help educate people about what grants are out there, maybe what could help fund some of their projects, because there is an unprecedented amount of federal funding out there. So I'm going to share that link in the chat to our regional climate action plan. Are there any other final questions before we close out?
That's great, Sunny. Thank you so much for all your work.
Yeah, thank you, Sunny. And those of us in person will head to T-Rex's lounge and for beer after this. And hopefully we'll see some of you next month, September 24th, talking about solar at the City of Beverly Hills, St. Paul's Episcopal Church, and Forsyth Elementary. So we'll be learning about cost savings they've seen there. Thank you so much, everyone.
What's the town?
Beverly Hills, City of Beverly Hills.
It's the one full of hillbillies. If you believe television.